Hey there, everybody. This is Caleb Mackey again with another Life's Little Golden Nuggets. Today's episode is one that I just recently stumbled across that I found very fun and something that really reminds me about how one person can influence another even if they may not know of each other, but due to unforeseen circumstances, it leads into a future and a path that totally changes everything for what I think most of us would think the better. And this comes from the life of American President Chester Alan Arthur. I read it in the book The Unexpected President by Scott S. Greenberger, and I was very surprised, pleasantly. It talked about how for much of his life, Chester Alan Arthur was a man who had a father. It talked about his father who was a very integral person, fought to do what was right, at least, from his point of view, and really tried to instruct his son to be the same. His son, Chester Alan Arthur, who would eventually become president due to some unforeseen circumstances, when he first started off as a young man, he was honorable, had a sense of fashion. He really liked kind of, I say it hoity-toity, more like the luxurious lifestyle, but he tried to do his job well as a lawyer. Eventually, he gets himself involved with the Republican Party, and specifically with a man named Roscoe Conkling. And I shudder every time I hear that name because, as I've read many books about this specific time, where Chester Alan Arthur was president from 1881 to 84, the 1860s, 70s, and 80s, the man named Roscoe Conkling was a big name in the Republican Party. And he was so hot-headed. He did his job well, but he was very, very prideful. And he turned into being a political boss, where he and his cronies would rig elections, they would force people to make different decisions about things, and they really just influenced a lot of what was going on in the community, and definitely not in a good way. And eventually, Arthur falls into that crowd, and very slowly, I think I remember someone saying about how they noticed that Arthur's character itself changed. He started kind of acting very much like a crony. And then through some more crazy situations and circumstances, when James Garfield wins the 1880 presidential election, he actually gets Chester Alan Arthur to be his vice president. And they did it because they wanted to get Roscoe Conkling's support in the Republican Party, and since he had such a vast following of people in power, they said, give us one of your guys and we'll make him vice president, so that we're all in agreement that though Garfield may have talked about wanting to be a different president and not to try to follow in the line of political bosses, they still needed help. So Arthur became vice president, and then very to his word, Garfield started making changes where he didn't really start following the orders that Roscoe and the other bosses thought he would do. And not even in relation to that, what led to Arthur becoming president is also very strange. A man named Charles Guiteau ended up assassinating him because he thought that he deserved a place in the position of either some position that the president could offer due to him giving him his support in the election. And of course they said no, and Guiteau was, at least everybody reports that he's very mentally deranged. He eventually shoots Garfield a couple of months into the presidency. And while he is struggling for his life, everybody starts to look at Chester Alan Arthur about becoming president. And not very many people had some great feelings about that, because they all knew he was Conkling's crony. So everybody was thinking, oh no, here's a chance now for Roscoe and all the other guys to pull the strings with the highest position in the United States. But the part that was crazy, the part that shocked me, that probably launched me into being such a big fan of Chester Alan Arthur, is more because of the influence of one person. A woman who decided to take action to let Chester Alan Arthur know that he needed to be different. This woman's name was Julia I. Sand. And not much is known about how well, like, they didn't really know each other. She just knew of Arthur and apparently knew about his reputation. And she wrote Arthur a letter that said this: "The hours of Garfield's life are numbered. Before this meets your eye, you may be president. The people are bowed in grief, but do you realize it? Not so much because he is dying as because you are his successor. What president ever entered office under some circumstances so sad?" She already knew that with his reputation, people were like, "Oh, we do not want Arthur to be president. That's even worse than Garfield being shot. Oh, goodness." The day Garfield was shot, the thought rose in 1,000 minds that you might be the instigator of the foul act. Is not that a humiliation which cuts deeper than any bullet can pierce? Your kindest opponents say Arthur will try to do right, adding gloomily, "He won't succeed, though. Making a man president cannot change him." But making a man president can change him. Great emergencies awaken generous traits which have lain dormant half a life. If there is a spark of true nobility in you, now is the occasion to let it shine. Faith in your better nature forces me to write to you, but not to beg you to resign. Do what is more difficult and brave. Reform. It is not proof of highest goodness never to have done wrong, but it is proof of it, sometimes in one's career, to pause and ponder, to recognize the evil, to turn resolutely against it. Once in a while, there comes a crisis which renders miracles feasible. The great tidal wave of sorrow which has rolled over the country has swept you loose from your old moorings and set you on a mountaintop alone. Disappoint our fears. Force the nation to have faith in you. Show from the first that you have none but the purest of aims. You cannot slink back into obscurity, if you would. 100 years hence, schoolboys will recite your name in the list of presidents and tell of your administration. And what shall posterity say? It is for you to choose. Julia Sand. All of that struck me so powerfully. She knew, she was aware of the situation apparently. And yet she was trying to tell him, you can be better than this. A random woman writing the new soon-to-be president of the United States that he has a choice to be different from where he had come. And Arthur took this advice, and though he was definitely not perfect, he definitely broke away from the ties of the cronyism and tried to fight for a more fair political system and tried to establish a better character for himself as president of the United States. And I definitely think he did. A lot of people say so as well. And more than likely, it never would have happened had he received this letter from this random American woman who found it important enough for herself to say, please do not be what everybody thinks you're going to be. And that just reminds me about how today we all have a choice too. We can influence other people to say, don't be just like what everybody else might think. Be better. Reform. Recognize the evil. Turn resolutely against it. It almost sounds very Theodore Roosevelt-ish from the previous video I talked about, but this is amazing. I love how she wrote it. And I'm going to keep this letter as kind of encouragement for myself in my own life too. And I hope that this has encouraged you today as well. So if you really want, check out the book, The Unexpected President. There's more about it with his and Sand's relationship, but just wanted to really share that with you today, to share the joy and the power and the beauty that comes from how one person can influence another and how they don't want things to stay the same and they want to help each of us fight for better. And I hope that you'll be like that in your own world too. All right, guys, that's the life little gold nugget for today. Thank you so much, and then we'll be meeting next time.